You're in a clinic exam room. Your spouse is holding your hand. You're wondering if you're going to live or die. The air in the room is thick with worry and fear. The doctor comes in and sits down. For 20 years, I was that doctor, and my business was second chances. I had a pattern when I would first meet a patient who needed a transplant. After introducing myself, hi, I'm David Weill, I would start with one simple question. What would you do if today was your last day? Which drove my nurses crazy. Get on with it, they would say. We have lots of work to do, lots of patients to see. Let's get to the important stuff, they would say. I would answer, this is the important stuff. The rest can wait. What would you do if today was your last day? I asked thousands of patients this very question. This question helped me learn what my patients valued most. Not if they wanted to live, that was obvious, they were there to see me about a transplant, but why? What attracted me to transplantation when I was a young man, and I think you can clearly see I'm not a young man now, was that the operation was the ultimate reset, a chance to get it right once and for all. And for a society that values second chances, well, the prospect of doing better the next time around, I wanted in on that. I wanted to know what people would say and do with this opportunity. But even more than that, I wanted to know what I might do if given a second chance. The ability to correct the choices that I've made, the mistakes that I've made. It turns out the people who face certain death get crystal clear about what it means to live. If you can put yourself in these people's shoes for the next several minutes, I think you can learn some of the lessons that I learned as well. Because here's the thing. If you know how you would spend your last day, you can make decisions about how to spend your second to last day, your last year, your last decade, and every day from this moment forward. It was a unique masterclass, a masterclass for me in all that really matters. So, follow me down the hospital hallway and let me introduce you to some of my patients. First, meet Nancy. When Nancy was a little girl, she was told by her parents she wasn't enough. She wasn't smart enough, she wasn't thin enough, she needed to do more and be more. She carried this burden with her every day of her young life. When I saw her in the clinic, she was crushed, disappointed. I asked her my question, what would you do if today was your last day? Before I did that, though, she had already found a drug that made her feel better. And that drug led to an addiction, and that addiction led to a disease called pulmonary hypertension. She needed a transplant to survive. So when I asked her, when I saw her in that clinic, she was disheveled, she had lost color in her face, she was missing teeth. When I said, do you think death is a real possibility? She nodded. She knew it was. So I said, what would you do if today was your last day? She looked right at me, and she said, all my life, I've had to live up to other people's expectations. I've had to be the thin, pretty girl, the one that would achieve stardom. So on my last day, I would only live up to one person's expectations, my own. She looked right at me and said, my own. That way, at least I could have one day of peace. I came out of the room. I asked my nurse, put her on the waiting list right now. After her successful transplant, I saw Nancy in the clinic a few weeks later. She was a different person. The color had returned to her face. She had gained weight. She smiled a lot. I asked her how things were going at home. She said, great. I get up in the morning after a full night of sleep. I look in the mirror and ask myself a question I've never been able to ask myself before. Who do I want to be today? Who do I want to be? Nancy had reset her life and now lived up to only one person's expectations, her own. That conversation got me to think about my own expectations, and especially how I parent my own 2 daughters. Through my life journey, and I might mention a decent amount of red wine, I've learned one deep insight. Ready for it? Expectations can be a real bitch. They lead you around by the nose. They get you to do things you don't want to do and be someone you don't want to be. But if you're going to have high expectations, and that's okay, at least make them your own. That's the lesson here. Change doesn't only occur, though, when you look at yourself differently. It also occurs when you look at other people differently. Let me introduce you to Larry. Now, Larry wasn't my favorite patient. We're taught in medical school to treat everybody the same with the utmost respect, but my friend Larry tested me on that one. When Larry, a white man, found out that he received a donor lung from a black victim of a gunshot wound, his initial reaction was one of anger and hate. How could you give me a lung from one of those people? He told me in the clinic room. He then said, I should have been given the opportunity to refuse that lung, the lung that saved his life. We in the clinic room sat there speechless, as Larry's words echoed hundreds of years of prejudice and hate. But recovery does something to a person. As time went on, something in Larry began to shift. He began to ask questions about his donor, about more than his skin color, about who the man was. We suggested that he write a letter to his donor family, and that letter led to an email, and that email led to a meeting where Larry stood face to face with the family of the black man, the human being, who saved his life. In that room, surrounded by hugs and tears, Larry got to experience what selflessness really looks like. He got to experience the best of humanity. I got to know Larry a little bit better as time went on. He told me one day, Doc, I think we're more alike than different. I think the way we talk, the way we worship, the color of our skin, it's just the outer layers of our humanity. He told me, I think our biology is the same. I nodded and I said, our biology is the same, so are our hopes and dreams. Larry admitted to me that his beliefs came from a place of ignorance. He expressed shame that he had carried around these beliefs, judging people by the color of their skin, acknowledging finally that everyone's blood runs red. I assured him that it did. I had seen it. Larry had hit the reset button. Now, let me introduce you to Jennifer, who reset her family with this operation. Jennifer was married to a man named Steve. Steve and Jennifer's mom got into a huge argument over Thanksgiving dinner about what? Politics. Sound familiar? Steve and Jennifer's mom didn't speak to each other for years, and things got so tense that Jennifer asked her mom, look, just to apologize to him so that we can get over this. Her mother said, nope. That led to estrangement between Jennifer and her mom, so much so that when we transplanted Jennifer, her mom didn't come to visit her in the hospital, not once in 3 weeks. Jennifer breezed through her recovery. I saw her in the clinic soon after her transplant. I said, what'd you do when you got home? It's the first thing you did. And she said, I went to go see my mom. It was time to put this foolishness behind us. And they did. I said, did your husband go with you? And she said, yes, because I told him if he didn't, not to be at home when I got back. That's why I love transplant. Jennifer had reset her life and had repaired one of the most valuable relationships in her life. I want you to meet Mary. Mary was in an abusive marriage. During her transplant evaluation, Mary was quite open about it with our social worker. Our social worker asked her, "Why do you stay with this man?" And Mary said, "I need his health insurance. Without it, I can't get a transplant. Without it, I would die." Sadly, she's right. We were worried, though, about this relationship because after transplant, you need somebody to take care of you. We weren't sure her husband was even going to do that. But we went ahead anyway because Mary needed that transplant to survive. We transplanted her. She did well. I saw her in the clinic afterwards and said, "How are things going?" She told me, "I got a job as a graphics designer, and it provides health insurance to me." I said, "Well, that's great. How are things going with your husband?" She said, "Ex-husband." Mary had hit the reset button. Finally, I want you to meet Michael. Michael was a physician who developed an end-stage lung disease that needed a transplant to survive. He was a surgeon in private practice, and he earned a good living in our for-profit healthcare system. But there was something that was missing in him. Day after day, he took care of patients. He did good work. But he turned away too many who couldn't afford his services. It didn't sit well with him. But he felt stuck, rationalizing, like many of us do, that we can't fix our broken healthcare system. We just do the best we can. When I saw Michael after his transplant, he told me he was leaving the hospital where he worked after 25 years of being there. I said, "Quitting medicine?" He said, "No, I'm quitting this type of medicine. I'm moving to Africa to work in a clinic there to get back to who I am, to what I am." I nodded. I was frankly a little bit jealous. Michael had reset his life to live in such a way that it aligned with his values. By the way, you probably already know this. We physicians make the worst patients. Michael was an exception to that. So, as I hope you can see, transplant is more than just an operation. A bad body part comes out, a good one comes in. It's a reconstruction of a life. I got to witness this day after day at patients' bedside. All these lessons given to me, usually before lunch. How lucky I've been. But the reality is this: the clock is running for all of us. If we truly accept the fact that we don't have forever, can we use all that really matters as our North Star? What if everyone did that? Would we stop trying to find what really matters on our screens, on our social media platforms, or even worse, in the echo chamber of cable news? My diagnosis is that we spend an ungodly amount of time on external things, striking through our to-do list one after another, but we spend hardly any time on our inner life, doing self-discovery, or what's often called doing the work. How are you, we're asked. I'm so busy. Is being busy a badge of honor, or is it just another way of saying you don't have your life under control? You decide. But really, we decide, each one of us. Look, I'm not here to judge. Maybe I am a little bit. I spent most of my career in a conference room debating who was deserving of a second chance at life until I had to make another decision. After 2 decades in the field, I left Stanford Medical Center when it was time for my own reset, time to leave the front lines of medicine, to get back to who I am, to get back to doing the things that matter to me, like writing and like sharing these stories with you. My patients taught me that we spent way too much time building our resume. They taught me that I should spend the rest of my life building my eulogy. So now, I get back to the question that I asked thousands of my patients, the one that started this whole journey. What would you do if today is your last day? You don't need a terminal diagnosis to answer that. I don't have one. At least I think I don't. But I met every day with a group of patients who did, who taught me that focusing on what really matters is all that really matters. You have the answer right now. It's within each of you. The Great Reset is available to all of us. It's available today. Get to it. The clock is running.